Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We will get started in just a minute. Okay, Rena, are you ready? I'll just introduce myself to people. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on a cold winter night after a long day at work. We really appreciate you being here. My name is Dinah Mack. I'm the Education Program Manager with Mass Farm to School, and I am so excited to be here with Rena Zampiron, who is so knowledgeable about kids in the garden and early childhood and elementary and all things garden and farm to school. And I always learn so much from these sessions. So this is the fourth of a series. All of the sessions will be uploaded to our website at Mass Farm to School. And you will also get sent the recording. You should all have access to the chat. And so, Rena, take it away.
Yes, so speaking of the chat, please make sure that you change it to respond to everyone because I think the default is host and panelists only. And throughout the workshop, we're going to have a chance to share your input and your stories in the chat. So make sure that you are set up to do so. And also, how about to get us started, just toss in the chat your name, where you work, and the age of the children you are working with, or whatever role you fill at your school, just so we have a little sense of who's here tonight. And I know we have some returners, but we may also have some new people joining us tonight. So, really excited to see you all.
Hey, Rena, did you want us to, in the chat, to also do this share with a neighbor special memory?
Yes. So if you are ready to do so, in the chat,
Okay.
we're going to share a special memory about communal eating. So that might be eating with your family during a holiday, or maybe when you were at summer camp and you got to eat meals all together in the dining hall, staying at a hostel somewhere, or whatever that might be. And then just share who did you share that experience with? What were they serving? And why did you pick that memory? Why does that one really come to the surface for you? Welcome, Lindsay. Where is Making Opportunity Count from? What town are you in? Fitchburg. Oh, wonderful. Not sure if you've ever had the chance to work with our amazing educator, Kathy, who works out in Fitchburg a lot with some of the Head Start schools. But she does a lot of early ed work, and she's phenomenal. Right. So while you're working on typing up your communal eating experience, I'll share one of mine. So one of the first ones that jumps to my mind is when I was a young girl celebrating the first and second Seders of Passover with my maternal grandparents, because they would invite everyone. So we would have like upwards of like 40 people, and the table would literally go through 3 rooms of the house. There was so much food. There was, of course, singing and storytelling and hiding the afikomen that the kids had to go find. It was so much more than just the food. It was a whole experience, but just that sense of that table that was so long, it took a dog leg and like turned around through the like family room and the TV room, and it went through the kitchen, and it was just really cool, just having such a huge splay out for everyone. So, and it was almost all family, but anyone that my grandparents knew that didn't have someplace else to go for Passover, they were getting invited too. So there was often people I'd never met before, along with all my cousins and aunts and uncles and everyone. So let's see what everyone shared. Um, So Dinah is saying favorite memories, eating with people outside on a spring or summer night. Love being in that environment with people. It always feels special. Dinah, I feel like I just got like a mental image of doing this, which is impressive given that we've got about 2 feet of snow outside. The thought of actually like eating outside in summer is like a very distant memory. But yeah, that made me smile. Diane shares she's from Sustainable Nantucket. And communal eating is how you get through winters here on Nantucket. I love that. I imagine, like the vineyard, there is a drastic change in the number of people that live on the island. And so the winters probably feel a little isolating. So I love that communal eating is what helps get you through those kind of quiet, dark days in the winter. Oh, well, you are a Head Start in childcare, so you don't know if you've worked with Kathy. Kathy Kennedy is her last name now, I remember. But maybe, I don't know. She's been working in Fitchburg quite a bit, so over the years. I don't know if she hasn't made it to yours yet. Maybe she will soon. All right. And hopefully, some other participants will share their communal eating memories in here as well. But I think, I love talking about the community tie ins when it comes to food because food is just such a wonderful way to bring people together. It's something that helps us celebrate both our individuality and our sense of belonging in various communities. We all eat, but we all have different favorite recipes. We all have different dietary needs. We all have different histories through food. So I love to kind of get to focus a little bit on how food fits into our school community and beyond. So this is our Eat Together, our Grow Together, Eat Together workshop. I really feel like that's supposed to be the other way around, but whatever. Cultivating community through food. And Catherine Pope is not on this workshop. I did not update the slide. I'm Rena, statewide early education program manager. And this is our fourth and final workshop in the series. So this is going to be all about different ways to reach all your many communities through gardening, cooking, and eating. So I know we're going through this for the fourth time, but some of you may not have been here before. So we are Mass Audubon. I just learned yesterday it is now our 130th year. We celebrated our anniversary, I believe, on the 10th, maybe our 10th of February is the anniversary of the very first meeting of Mass Audubon. So 130 years we've been doing this, and what we do is are just very dedicated to protecting the nature of Massachusetts for people and for wildlife. Our impact is quite diverse across the state, including large amounts of members and families, reaching a huge number of visitors to our various sanctuaries, providing lots of educational opportunity for children, teens, and adults, and then protecting large areas of land, both urban and rural, and doing some advocacy work as well. And this is just a little bit of our metrics, and I am delighted to say that they are actually outdated. Again, at my meeting the other day, I discovered we are now up to 21 all-person trails, and 2 more, hopefully, by the end of the fiscal year. So we are really working on finding different ways to increase our accessibility to people of all abilities so that everyone can get out and enjoy nature. And these are our many sites across the state, and this is constantly changing as well as we are able to find other areas of land that are up for purchase and protection and increases in accessible programming. So this is something that is always changing. All right, so early education at Mass Audubon. So why is this something that we do? Why is this something that we are talking about? Well, you probably are aware of the incredible impact that starting with children at this age presents as an opportunity to have children get the benefits of early access to nature in terms of their physical and cognitive and social and emotional development. We want children to be able to build strong connections to nature and learn about how they fit into the natural world, and hopefully have them grow into adults who care about nature and want to continue to be involved in it and protect it. We do this through our own 6 nature licensed preschools, many of which do also do gardening. We visit schools and do programming in early education centers. We also do a lot of work with young families, and then we have workshop series and other resources like this one. So we really want to support early educators like yourselves that want to learn more about how to do nature and garden-based education with young children. And then I think that this is just always really important for us to keep in mind. Why farm to school, farm to early childhood? Why is this such a hot topic? And why are we doing this, right? Because it does take some extra thought and planning and resources. So, why is it so important? Whoopsie, sorry. So this is just a few of the reasons why this is important. I'm sure you have some of your own as well. But first and foremost, it really enhances the quality of any program that you add this to. It's getting children outside. It's promoting healthy behaviors. It's enhancing your curriculum. As those of you who took my actual classroom workshop 2 weeks ago, you learned that farm to school lessons are so much more than just science and nutrition. There is opportunities for incorporating art and music and social and emotional development. So really all the different learning domains really do fit into farm to school work. As we said at the beginning of the workshop, it's a great way to engage families and communities through your farm to school work. It's something that families often get very engaged in. It supports the whole development of the child. And, we would expect that it's going to promote healthy eating and wellness behaviors in children. And of course, anytime we're doing work like this, it's important to mention that we really want to advance racial and social equality, right? We understand that not all groups of people have equal access to healthy, fresh, local foods, or even to have access to enough food of any sort. And so making sure that that is part of our conversation and that we are thinking about how can we promote and support equality and access for those who historically have not had the same level of access in the past. And then lastly, we really want to promote our next generation of eaters, right? We want children to grow into adults that care about eating locally and eating fresh foods and exploring different flavors and tastes and nutrition. So these are just a few of the reasons. Hopefully you have more, especially personal reasons, because I think a lot of us come to this work with our own personal why of why do we care about this and why do we want to make it a priority for our learners. So, we set up this whole workshop series around the 3 C's of farm to school work out of the Northeast Farm to School Institute. And we are on the third C, which is the community piece. So basically, that just means, how do we engage the larger preschool community, which includes our families, our local producers of food, grocery store owners, farm stand, chefs and restaurateurs, and then even the larger picture of policymakers and those that are the ones creating the funding and the opportunities and the policies around this. I will also say I didn't put this in here entirely, but remember that your preschool as a whole is a community. And so you have your classroom community, but working with the other classrooms in your school is also an element of that community aspect. And how can we build something that works and is inclusive of the whole school and builds a community feel around that as well. So we're not going to break into groups of 3, but what we are going to do is I want you to spend just a minute or two thinking about a farm to school activity, either one you have already done before in your classroom or with learners, or one that you would like to try. So you're going to work on that, thinking of what it's going to be. And then what I want you to do is spend about 5 minutes taking that activity that you have in your mind and thinking about answering these 3 questions. So, one, how can you include cultural responsiveness in this farm to school activity that you are doing? How can you engage the families in that activity? And then who maybe from your local community you would like to engage or reach out to for this activity. So I'm going to give you, since you have to think of the activity and then do this, let's give you we'll do 8 minutes so that we will come back at 6:25. And then I would love to hear in the chat what your activity is and some of those adaptations and growth potentials you've come up with. So we'll meet back here at 6:25. All So Diane shares that you have two initiatives you'd like to work towards at the moment. One is the more realistic one has to do with having a Three Sisters garden. This has the potential to have historical and cultural inclusivity. However, I'm only at the stage where the corn and beans grew this year and actually more amazed than the kids were. So really hoping to find learning opportunities from Indigenous people so I can carry information over in a way that you don't feel is fraudulent and honor the tradition. That is such an incredible point. And I have to say, Diane, that is something I struggle with too. At Mass Audubon, there are definitely initiatives going on right now to work more with local Indigenous communities, but I'm not part of those teams. So I find it very difficult to know how to incorporate Indigenous practice, Indigenous techniques, stories, and all of that in a way that is respectful. And that includes, directly their voice. But I think that it's very appropriate and smart to be thinking about that. I don't know if Dinah, you have any recommendations on ways that Mass Farm to School has worked with any local Indigenous populations thus far.
We're actually having a webinar this spring that I'm in the process of creating, which is a collaboration between a school and Native partners. And that is going to be in April. And at our conference, we have the Nauset School will be presenting, an educator and a partner will be presenting on their work that they did uh, in terms of history, right, and looking at curriculum. And I am, Diane, while Rena is talking, I'm looking up some things for you that I can put in the chat. I'm
I
wondering if you've gotten in touch with Sustainable Nantucket. Um, oh, great. Yeah, they're gonna, you'll be at the conference. If you're at the conference, there's going to be a really interesting collaboration that a middle school teacher did. And there is the Indigenous partner, Kitty Hendricks, will be there presenting with the educator. So they'll be partnering in that workshop.
I will also say I
And
don't
you can
know.
adapt, and you can adapt. Obviously, it's a middle school, but you'll be able to adapt the practice to your practice.
Um, I was going to say I don't know the topic of the discussion, but I know that, and forgive me if I'm misremembering her name, but Robin Wall Kilmer, I think is her name, the author of Braiding Sweetgrass, is
Mhm.
actually going to be giving a talk, which unfortunately I think actually may be the same day as the Farm to School conference. No, it's like a Saturday or Sunday. It's something weird. Like I know there's a reason why I can't go to it, but she is doing a talk in Massachusetts coming up. Mass Audubon had a few reserved tickets for our staff, but it will be well worth looking up when and where that will be because it's going to be this spring. Um, I want to say no, it can't be St. Anselm. Yes, definitely do that. And I feel like I can't remember which network it was. It may have been, what is it, Kids Gardening, that website. I have to look it up. They actually had a really
Mhm.
wonderful free webinar series that was recorded about diversity in gardening, and each workshop focused on different groups of crops and communities for whom those crops are essential to. Like they had ones from Central America and they had ones from Eastern Asia. And I feel like one of the workshops was specifically on indigenous crops and planting. If you email me after this, I'm happy to look up the info because I know I saved the certificate of completion so I could look it up for you and get you that info because it was really wonderful. Yeah, just email me. And what was your second initiative? Because you put in your first one, but I don't think I saw the second one in here. I'll give you a chance to write that down.
Oh, Diane, I'm realizing that I didn't read your introduction, and I'm realizing I was
Yeah.
looking for the Farm to School managers from Sustainable Nantucket, and now I'm looking back and I'm like, oh, it's you. You are the farm to school manager. So this
It's
is great.
awesome.
So perfect. I'm seeing you on your website, and now I'm like, oh, this is the same person in the Zoom. So that's very meta.
Excellent. Did anyone else think about a farm to school activity that you're either thinking of doing or have done, and some of the ways to work in cultural responsiveness or your family or school community into um, that activity that you are planning? You can toss it up in the chat. I'm trying to think of a good example I might share with you from some of my own classrooms. Trying to recall a good one. I mean, I know I worked with a school in Concord, Mass, and one of their teachers also was a part-time farmer at one of the local farms, and so she was constantly bringing in local produce from their farm. And then they did a family pickling activity, and so she brought in different vegetables from her farm, and then families came in with their kids and had the chance to pickle the different vegetables that she had brought in. So that included a local farm, and it included the family communities. I don't know what kind of herbs and spices they'd included, so there may even have been the opportunity for some different pickling flavors, like kimchi type, so you could get a little bit of the different kinds of pickles. There's actually a really awesome book out there that I just bought, and the name is, I think it's like Pickle Words, and it's basically a book all about pickles, and it goes into the many different types of pickles and who makes pickles and what gets pickled, and all of that is really neat. So the second initiative was trying to build a school garden that has a bed in the garden for, oh, wow, that'd be cool, for each country, either represented in the World Cup or the Olympics, but highlighting the many cultures here on your island. Wow, wouldn't that be cool? I love the idea of themed garden beds. I've never tried one like that, and I think that's neat. I often go for themes like a sensory bed. So it's all things that you can either smell, taste, touch. They're colorful, whatever it may be. Maybe they even make a sound at various times. Or a pizza bed. So it is different things you would use to make pizza, or a pollinator bed. So it's all things that help the pollinators, or a Peter Rabbit bed. And it's all things that we happen to have a classroom rabbit, so we would use it to feed to our rabbit. But themed beds, I think, are really neat. And then it also gets an interesting idea of, well, does each classroom take care of a bed? And then maybe if each classroom is responsible for a bed, then, if they are growing a bed for Brazil, then maybe the foods that grow from there, they're responsible for having, there'll be like some class, a school-wide party, and they have to create a Brazilian dish to share at the party from the ingredients, or some of the ingredients they grew in their garden bed. And then another classroom makes one that involves a Korean dish and some of the Korean veggies. And then one might be, from an Ethiopian dish. So like that would be really cool, but that may be a little bit longer in planning, but I could see some really interesting ideas there as well. Awesome. Thank you for sharing some of these really neat ones. And please do toss in other ideas. Or on the other side, if you have an activity and you're struggling with, how could I make this more culturally responsive? How could I tie in to our local community? Feel free to toss that in to the chat as well, because this really is about building ideas and resources. And so if you're feeling stuck, like, we're here to be able to share some of those resources that Dinah and I have, and maybe even other educators in the group may have had luck with different experiences. So don't be afraid to put some ideas in here that you would like some help with. So feel free to continue typing, but we're going to move along. And whoops, there we go. So, how do we really set up this space where from the beginning, the garden is not just about your students or your plan of what you want to grow, but so it really reflects your larger school community, your larger family community, your larger cultural community, whatever that may be. So, we start small. We think about, what do the students want to grow? What does the school want to grow? I'm sure you all have your own ideas. I mentioned the pizza bed. That is very popular. Everyone loves to make pizza. So, oftentimes they want the tomatoes and the garlic and the basil and the onions, things that are pretty common. But, are there things that children may think of that you wouldn't have thought of? Things that maybe are less common in what we might think of, the standard American garden, but would be really wonderful to be able to add and could grow well here. And I definitely suggest, reach out to the families. What do they want to see in the garden? What kinds of vegetables do they use when they're cooking? What kinds of herbs and seasoning? What are they excited to have access to? And you can also reach out to growers, local growers. You may find that some families don't necessarily share the information. Maybe they haven't yet felt that sense of buy-in. So ask the farmers, what are the popular local crops around here? What do you find that our local community wants to eat? And then you can ask for more advice. What's going to grow well? You may have a lot of families that are like, yeah, we love okra. And then, the local farmers are like, that's great, but our climate really isn't fit for growing okra. Maybe you could try growing this similar type product, or this other product that's very common in, foods that often have okra in them, like Southern foods. Also, think about what's going to be successful for growing with young children. And, I say that with a bit of a grain of salt. You don't have to plan everything that you put in the ground is going to be easy and guaranteed success, because that's not realistic. I always put some things in my garden that I'm like, hey, it would be super cool if this grows, but I know it's a tough one and I haven't had success in the past, but my kids are really excited. So let's try it. But make sure you also plan for at least some things that you're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we can get that to grow. Things that I at least have a lot of luck growing, green beans for some reason. It's more than anything else. I grow green beans like crazy. Often herbs are pretty easy success. Small tomatoes like cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes. So like I plan the things that I know I'm going to get. So there is some level of completion with the kids. There's some level of satisfaction. Yes, we grew this. And then I also, for the last couple of years, have tried to grow cantaloupe and watermelons. I think the biggest I ever got was like the size of a softball, which is not that impressive for a watermelon or cantaloupe. I think it had about 3 bites of melon in it. But I keep trying because my daughters keep asking. And one of these days, I promise, I am going to get a full-size watermelon. So it is okay to plant some things that are a bit of a stretch, but make sure you also plan for things you know are going to work. When you're planning what you're going to grow, think about what recipes do you want to be able to cook with the kids. Sure, radishes are easy, but how many different ways can you actually work radishes into a recipe, right? So think about, what do we want to try cooking with the kids? Are we going to try to make something like enchiladas or empanadas or miso soup? Not that I think we could grow anything that's in miso soup, but thinking about the different types of foods that we want to be able to make, what can we grow that could be a part of that recipe? And really, right now is where you should be having those conversations, because in about a month to 6 weeks, you're going to have to start ordering and starting some of these seeds inside. Remember, in New England, we have a pretty short growing season. So I usually start my peppers indoors sometimes in February. So, like, I'm going to start looking at my catalogs very soon to start thinking, what do I want to order? And things do sell out too. So if you wait too long, you're not going to get the varieties that you want. So start having these conversations now so that sometime in February you're ready to order. And by March, you can start planting things inside, and even a few things may be able to go outside. So, don't wait too long. That being said, if seedlings don't take, if you don't get what you want, you can also buy things that have already been sprouted elsewhere and save yourself some time. So then, how do you start planting the garden for maximum community engagement? So definitely, if you have any existing relationships or you want to start a new one, reach out to some of your local farms or even some of your farm stands and see if you can get some sense of what is the planting calendar. When should things go outside? That being said, I don't usually ask because there are so many questions I have. What I normally do is go online and look up something like Burpees or Johnny's or Farmer's Almanac. And every year I print out a planting calendar, because things do change year to year based on last year's first frost, last frost, first thaw, and all of that. So I will print out a calendar, and then I will put it on an actual calendar and be like, on this week, start these seeds inside. On this week, start these outside. On this week, transplant these outdoors, so that I know when should I be doing all of this work. And it makes it a lot easier, and you don't have to do everything on the same day. And you don't then have the risk of, well, gee, I started these inside 3 weeks too early, and now they've gotten overgrown and they died because they didn't get transplanted in time. So it's really important to kind of have a sense when everything needs to get planted and where. Uh, then you might need some help doing all this work, because starting a garden is a lot of work. So you may have some families that would be willing to come in and help with the planting. And it doesn't have to be a mom and a dad. It could be a grandparent, an aunt and an uncle, an older cousin, an older sibling. You never know who in the family community has experience with or enthusiasm for planting. You can reach out to local 4-H groups. They may be looking for an opportunity to give their students a chance to practice planting and turning over a garden, or helping to build garden beds. Eagle Scouts, Girl Scouts might have availability to come and help with the process, whether that is with your students or on a weekend. Local agricultural students at various state or tech schools may be willing to come in and do some lessons or some help. Retired gardeners, you can reach out to master gardener facilities and see what they might have. So, don't be afraid to ask, because you never know what people may be willing to do or offer if you just reach out and start making some of those connections. When it comes to the expense of growing a garden, again, don't be afraid to reach out to local farmers, see if they have extra seeds or seedling that they may be willing to share. Families may be starting seeds at home. And if they're anything like me, I always wind up with more seedlings than I can plant. And usually I donate them to my synagogue and we plant them in the school garden there. I'll give them out to neighbors and friends. So, it's wonderful to ask families, oh, are you doing any gardening at home? If you have any extra seedlings, we'd love to include them in our garden. Then there are maybe like a seedling exchange. So you could even have a bunch of families bring what they've grown and people can trade. So, that gets them gardening at home. Then this is a relatively new thing as far as I know, but local libraries and other horticultural societies sometimes do like a seed library or a seed swap. So you can go into libraries and there will be just seed packets of extra seeds, or horticultural groups may do a seedling swap where you bring in your seedlings and you can get them, or huge sales on them. Towns often organize these. So lots of opportunities for locally started seedlings, for extra seeds that would either be free or very discounted. And then again, if you need help getting the beds, Eagle Scouts and Girl Scouts may need service hours. Even high schoolers. Like when I was in high school, we had a service requirement of 120 hours. And there may be some crafty kids or some garden focused kids who would be willing to get their volunteer requirements met for graduation by doing either gardening or building garden beds. And then there are some organizations out there like Mill City Grows and City Sprouts who may be able to help build free garden beds for your school. So there's definitely a lot of resources out there that both Dinah and I can share of existing contacts that we know, as well as encouraging you all to explore a little bit and see what's in your area. Any questions so far before I move along? Just checking to make sure I didn't miss anything in here. Okay. I think I'm all caught up in the chat. Okay, good. All right, we'll keep moving along then. All right, so you've got the garden planted. Now what? I know that many schools do not run summer programs, so it's very difficult over the summer to maintain the garden. If you do have a summer program, definitely think about starting up a garden club. I know I'm working pretty closely with the Salem Public Schools, and at least one or two of their schools does run summer programming, and they do have a garden club. Other others of the Salem public schools have been using services from a local farm, and they come in and actually manage the garden over the summer for them. And that's a service that they're able to purchase. Think about reaching out to your communities. Again, semi-retired gardeners, ag students, but even family members. For our preschool garden, we had families volunteer to sign up for a week during the summer. And during that week, they would come in, they would water, they would weed, and then anything that was ready to eat, they could harvest and take home themselves. So it was a benefit for them. It was a fun activity to do with their children. And the kids got to see the garden that they had planted during the year, but then they also got to eat from the garden, and then they helped us take care of it. So that's another really nice opportunity. Definitely reach out to local farmers for support if you're struggling with pest management, weed control, best practices. One of the greatest pieces of advice I ever got was from one of my neighbors who is a huge backyard gardener. And the first year I planted potatoes, he warned me. He said, you better keep those plants covered until you can't cover them anymore, because the potato beetles will just come and eat all the leaves and then reproduce. But if you keep it covered until, the leaves are as high as they can go without you uncovering them, then the opportunity for those beetles to reproduce has kind of been lost. And so once you uncover them, you won't have massive issues with them getting eaten. And I've done it every year, and my potatoes do quite well. And I'm so grateful to him for that piece of advice that I would not have known about. Yes, definitely talk to local farmers or even just gardeners, right, who might have some advice. Um, Actually, one of the schools I'm working with in Springfield right now is thinking of doing this, reaching out to a local farmers market and have them come once or twice a year or once a month and host a little farmers market on site in the parking lot, so that as families are doing pickup or drop off, they can purchase some local produce. And also help to spread the word that for many that are on different types of food stamp programs, there are a lot of programs out there where you can actually get all the tickets back when you buy from a local farm stand. So it's basically like free food. So finding out a little bit more about what's available in your area really helps some of the EBT cards go a lot farther when they're buying those local foods. So not only does it support the local farms, it supports families getting fresh local foods. It also helps them to be able to purchase more food for their money in that respect. Think about inviting local chefs to come and do a cooking demo with some of the things you grew in your garden, right? So if you have some products and you're not quite sure, what can I do with this? See if they might be willing to come in and either do a lesson in the classroom with the kids, or it could be a lesson for the families where the parents come in at night and get to do a cooking lesson with a local restaurant. It's a great way for families to get to learn about one of the local restaurants and, spread some business there. And then they can try some new recipes and cooking with fresh products that you are growing in your garden. And then this is one that I've heard several times, especially with some of the YMCA preschools that I've worked with, but finding ways to take some of the extra bounty from their gardens and feed hungry families and individuals in their neighborhoods. So whether it's a YMCA that actually has some low-income housing or housing for the unhoused on site, or if they just offer a food pantry or food shelves, it's really amazing when the kids can help give back to the community through raising food. And one of my absolute favorite memories, I was working with an out-of-school program from the YMCA in Lynn. And as the kids were talking about growing a garden, one of the things the kids said is, let's grow lots and lots of food and we can, give it away for free to people who are hungry. And this was unprompted by the teachers. And it was just so amazing that, an elementary school student was thinking about not just growing food for themselves and what they could do with it, but how can we use this to improve and support our local community. And I just thought that was beautiful. All right. So, how do you center the foods of all peoples as part of your curriculum, your classroom, your cafeteria piece. So, yes, this is part of the curriculum and the cafeteria that we talked about earlier, but this is really looking at a lens of honoring all the diverse communities that you have, both those who are represented and those who are not. So starting with the very, very youngest learners, and I know there's a mix on how well this has been done in the past, but we've all seen the play food that they have in play kitchens, trying to supply play food that represents different fruits and veggies and prepared foods that are from a variety of cultures. I know that back in the day when my children were preschoolers, I got just a very simple wooden food set. And among the foods that came in the set was dragon fruit and leeks and some of the foods that are a little less expected. So things that maybe not everyone is familiar with. And I thought that that was really neat. So having food reflected in the classroom, whether that is in the play food or having different types of serving food, as we know that different cultures eat with different utensils, including their hands, having posters up that show foods of all different types, ensuring that you are using children's books that show different recipes and different ingredients that reflect a wide variety of cultures and religions and histories. Make sure that you're having discussions with the kids, both structured and informal. So that means whether it's a circle time structured activity or just talking in general with children around the snack table. Looking at all the different foods that everyone eats and drawing attention to new foods and getting more information about them and raising curiosity and respect around the different foods. And then also saying, oh, wow, I've never had that food, but it looks a little like this food that I like to eat. And it has some of the same ingredients and some of the same colors. And what do you like about your food? Oh, it's crunchy and it's sour. And I like crunchy and sour things too. So, having these discussions as early as possible to teach respect around other people's foods and curiosity and hopefully a willingness to try and experiment, right? Um, and then, whenever possible, provide children with the opportunities to experience new flavors, produce, and meals, right? We all know that getting kids to try unfamiliar foods is sometimes a challenge. It takes more than one attempt. Sometimes you have to mix the familiar with the unfamiliar or the like it, loved it, not so sure, need to try it again next time. So that we're kind of pulling away from the I didn't like it, but not this time, maybe next time sort of idea. But helping children to have the opportunity to slowly become comfortable with trying and working with new flavors. And then, really celebrating like, wow, that was new. Like, here's what I liked about it. Here's what didn't work so well for me. Maybe next time we can try it in this way. So that everyone has those different opportunities to both find foods that they are familiar with and ones that are new to them. So classroom cooking, and we've talked a little bit about this last week when we talked about cooking with young children, but we need to be mindful. How can we adapt the recipes to meet a variety of children's abilities for preparing food as well as dietary needs? Thinking about ways to highlight different cultures through the choice of the recipes we use and the ingredients. I feel like we often are very heavy on Italian food in this country, things like pasta and pizza, which is often very familiar and some of the first foods that we introduce our young children to. But there are so many other flavors out there, even ones that use similar ingredients. My daughters now are absolutely obsessed with tikka masala, which is a tomato-based sauce, but it's a little bit spicier, it's a little creamier. It has a very different type of cheese, right? It's paneer, and they love cheese, but paneer is very different from mozzarella in some ways, and in some ways not. But it was similar enough that they were willing to try it, and then they got really excited by the different flavors. So thinking about that, right? How can we take things that we think are going to be popular, but also a little bit of a push to try something a little different? Think about how can we bring the home to the school by sharing and trying recipes that children and families are eating in their households. So asking families to share in recipes, including that in our cafeteria to have recipes from the different cultures that are present in our community. And then inviting families to come in and share cooking of these recipes, or to do a communal eating event where they bring in food that they made and invite families and children to try them. So, I think it's wonderful when families can come in and do one of their recipes with kids and help show them, like, this is what we make in our house, and these are the tools we use, and the flavors and the smells. And then providing taste tests that children can try with their families at pickup time or take home. Because oftentimes, if a child is maybe not comfortable yet trying something new in the classroom setting, they may be more willing to try something alongside their families, either at home or during pickup time, or even if they see their parent try it first, that may be the inspiration for them to try it. And even if they don't, that pride in, I cooked this, my parent or family member tried it and they liked it, gives a sort of stepping stone for later. Okay, well, I made this again and I didn't try it last time, but my parent liked it so much. Maybe this time I will try it and see what they were so excited about. So anything where you can do scaffolding that helps to support that growth. So, where does food fit into all of this? And I will say that this is actually an impromptu activity that came up for the first time when I did this workshop series for Mass Farm to School last year. And the conversations were so rich and so really moving that I decided to make it a regular part of this workshop. And first of all, I want to say, don't feel like you have to contribute anything that you feel uncomfortable about, but this is a safe space where you can be open and share your previous experiences. So, what I would like you to do is to take a few minutes to think about two different situations. One is a time when you felt left out at some kind of event, at some kind of gathering, where you felt left out by the food choices that were available. So maybe you went to a restaurant that a friend had picked and there was nothing there you could eat. Or there was a school event where they were feeding people, but you were allergic to all of the foods and you couldn't partake. So think about that moment. How did you feel? And how did it affect your ability to engage in that moment, in that event that you were at? And then on the other side, think about a time where you felt seen or included based on your food choices, food preferences, dietary restrictions, whatever it may be. And how did you feel in that situation where you were seen and included? And how did it affect your engagement that time? And then, like, collectively, we can think about, why are these moments significant for you? Why are you remembering these positive and negative experiences? I will share my experience, but I want to give you all the chance to think about it, prepare some ideas that you can toss into the chat. So I feel like this one takes a little bit of thought. So I'm going to give us 10 minutes. So at 7:07, we will come back and share our experiences here. So take some time to think and write down your notes in the chat, and then we will come back in 10 minutes. Hello, everyone. Let's come on back. I am hoping that we will get some storytelling in the chat if you feel comfortable sharing. But I am happy to share some of my own personal experiences about either feeling included or left out by food. As some of you may know from previous workshops, I am a kosher observant Jew and have always been. So my entire life, I have kept kosher. I can only eat meat that is prepared in a kosher way. I can't do meat and dairy. One instance of really feeling left out was when I was in high school. My school did a musical tour of the UK. And so I was part of chorus, and we got to tour around the country. But the first 4 days of the tour were the last 4 days of Passover. So if you think keeping kosher is difficult, you have no idea how much harder keeping kosher for Passover is. I will not get into the details, but I basically, as like a sophomore in high school, had to carry around all of my food, which was not especially appetizing food, while everyone else was eating in the restaurants. And I'm trying to figure out, well, I think I can order the soup, but then it came with croutons in it. And they're like, well, can't you just pick the croutons out? And I'm like, no, not really. That doesn't work that way. And just feeling really othered and left out and just frustrated that it went that way, and that I, as you know, a high school kid, was just so awkward and left out in that experience. So that was certainly one of the more challenging experiences, although I've had many throughout my life around keeping kosher, including like literally being like a kid, like we're talking 6 years old, and going to a restaurant and asking for something without meat, or getting something that had shrimp on it. And again, can't you just pick it out? Or why would you eat Caesar salad with chicken? There's like no point to that at all. And I'm like six. Like, if I'm asking for it without shrimp, like, why is that an issue to you? And just having people being incredibly rude and dismissive and not understanding to just a kid, right? So those were some of the less positive experiences. I will say, however, that I've had some wonderful experiences where people have really thought about how they can include me, whether that was, making sure everything was labeled so I knew what had meat in it and what didn't. I think probably the first time I realized that I was really in love with the man who would become my husband was we were traveling to visit his family, and we knew we were going to have dinner at the family's house. And so, in preparation of that, he knew, oh, they're going to be doing like deli meats. So we packed our own kosher deli. And when we got there and they started bringing the food out, it was nothing noticeable. It was quiet. He just quietly brought out the kosher deli, and I could just sit with everyone else and eat with everyone else. And nobody even noticed that we were doing our own thing. And it was the first time where my keeping kosher in a non kosher setting wasn't made a big deal of. It didn't make anyone feel uncomfortable or embarrassed or awkward. It didn't make me feel embarrassed or awkward. And I was just so grateful that he was so accepting of this part of me that he could just make it like it wasn't a deal at all, right? This is just how it is. And that was very special for me to be able to feel that way after 30 plus years of feeling like I didn't fit in around food. So those are some of my experiences. I hope that one or two of you may share some similar experiences, hopefully some positive ones as well as challenging ones. Diane, thank you for sharing. So she shares that I am that person who loves to eat, can eat anything and a lot. And you've never felt left out. Well, that's wonderful. I'm so glad for you that you haven't ever had to experience that. Um, so many people in your life, personally and professionally, that you want to keep healthy and safe and treat with respect. And it's hard for you because you haven't had to do that. So it's a work in process for you. And that's great that you're working on that. Being seen for food choices, none to be proud of, because when the acknowledgments came, it was clear to me it more to do with their own habits than mine. Okay. If I'm thinking about what I eat, it is only because I'm listening to what my body needs. As far as food goes, I guess I don't discriminate. You know what, though? I totally understand that. And it can be very challenging for those who've never had any kind of food restriction that directly impacts them or their household. It can be a little hard to remember those things. And that's great that you admit that and acknowledge that. And just to create the space and say, oh, I know that work is doing this event. Can I just ask, is there anyone who, has any allergies or food needs, just so we make sure, or just encouraging everyone to label what is there, or like, hey, is there anyone who is comfortable making something gluten-free, or can we make sure that there's something vegetarian and gluten-free? So, just thinking about it. And again, it's those little things, that little like putting the labels on things so people know what they can eat, or saying, like, let's make sure we have at least one vegetarian dish. Those little things make a really big difference for feeling included and seen. I have to say, I did this activity last year with a couple of YMCA preschools on the North Shore. And one young lady was talking about how she has very particular food sensitivities around texture and food touching each other. And she said she had one cafeteria lady who understood this about her and was very careful every time she made her tray. She made sure that the food was kept very separate from each other. And that had such a lasting impact on her. She always remembered that woman because that woman cared enough. And how difficult was it really to put the food on the tray so it didn't touch? Really, it was nothing out of the way for the woman. But the fact that she cared enough and knew that person, that she could make that tiny little change, meant everything to that young woman and took no extra effort for the other person. But it just showed that she cared and was being respectful. And so those are the things that people remember. So just always think about, if you're going to be doing something that involves food, whether it is a taste test or a family event where you're feeding people, just think about, what can I do so that everyone knows that they are welcome here through the food that we are presenting. Okay. And you can always ask other members of your community. If you feel like it's something you don't know about, ask someone else who maybe has experienced food allergies in their family, or restrictive eating, or keeping halal or kosher, whatever it may be, to kind of get some additional perspective there. If anyone else wants to share in the chat, that's great. If not, that's fine too. But Diane, I celebrate you for feeling comfortable enough to share your story with us. So thank you for that. All right, so let's see. So cooking and eating, I know this slide is going to look a little familiar from some of the other workshops, but I still think it's got some useful points here. So remembering when food is involved, to work on coordinating with the cooking staff, the nutrition staff, your food suppliers, seeing where can we include local and fresh foods, and then also where and how can we include culturally relevant foods into the school meals. If you have a huge population of students that are coming from families that immigrated from Haiti, or from Mexico, or from Ukraine, or wherever they came from, make sure that some of the meals reflect some of the meals that are common in those cultures, right? That's basic respect, and is providing opportunities for other children in the program to explore some of the foods that their classmates eat. Thinking about partnering with local farms for some of those ingredients, as well as maybe they can help you with some meal planning and recipe ideas. I know that lots of farms, when they send out some of the produce that they grow that's maybe a little less expected or common, sometimes they will set out some suggested recipes, or here's how you can use this, and here are some yummy ways to eat it. Engage the families by asking if they'll share some recipes that you could try in your program. And then just being aware and considerate of different cultural and health related practices around food. You may have families that are very much against eating products from animals. They may be very into veganism, and, teaching respect, while also helping the child who practices veganism to be accepting of the fact that this is a choice that you and your family make, but it's okay that other families eat dairy and meat and eggs. And that's not a bad thing, because that's what's right for their family. I've had students whose family were so strongly against eating products from animals, that the child actually felt very angry and upset when they saw anyone eating an animal product in class, to the point where they would scream and shout and make threats. And so we really had to talk with them about, it's just as important for you to have respect about the food choices other people make as it is for people to respect your family's food choices. So, always be conscientious of, families' preferences. Maybe they're doing gluten free. Maybe, there's any number of things, but just how can we be aware of and incorporate that into our thinking and our practice? And part of that is having conversations with families about their dietary practices and children's individual dietary needs. Ideally, before you really start any of this work, in the beginning of the school year, when they enroll or when they start in the program, if you know that there is something the families have written down about their eating preferences, their dietary needs, talk to the family, understand more about it. Like, even if you think you know what keeping kosher means, there are many different ways that Jews keep kosher. And the way that I keep kosher is different from my friends who I grew up with. It's even different from other family members who keep kosher in a different way than I do. So it's important to understand each family's individual practice, so that you can understand what their expectations are, and you can do your best to work within those. And then, as I say, highlighting and honoring foods from all cultures and backgrounds, even if those are not reflected in your community. I've taught in communities that were very, homogeneous, and you really only have one or two predominant cultures there. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't introduce other flavors and cultures and histories around food. So making things visible, even if you currently don't feel like that culture is reflected in your program. And part of that includes teaching respect for food and everyone who eats it. All right, so we won't focus too deeply on this one because I know we've done it in a couple other workshops, but again, just the concept of, if you're doing a cooking project in your class, like making stone soup, where everyone brings in a different ingredient to add to the soup, how do we keep in mind that we have many different situations that may be going on with our students? So, if you have Uri, who like me keeps kosher and can't do non-kosher meat products, make the soup with a vegetable broth rather than a ham stock or a beef stock. If you have a child who recently immigrated and maybe his family doesn't speak a lot of English, so give them the ingredient list pictorially so they can look at the pictures and find that ingredient that they can bring in. A family who's on food stamps, you could encourage them to harvest something from your school garden, or you could ask them what would be easiest for them to bring. Maybe they grow herbs at home. Maybe they have, salt and pepper might be easier to bring in than vegetables. If you have a child who has celiac disease, don't put pasta in it. Maybe put rice instead, or a gluten-free pasta. Maybe you have a family that uses a whole bunch of different vegetables and ingredients in soup than what you're asking for. So encourage them to bring one of their favorite soup vegetables and introduce it to your classroom. That's a great way to show respect and teach the children about other produce that is out in the world. So just think about, anytime you're going to do cooking, think about the community that you have and what can we do so that these activities are fully accessible and welcoming to everyone who is part of the class. So communities, other ways that we can engage. We've talked about this, but different areas you may want to reach out: local farmers and farmers markets and farm stands, food forests, which are becoming pretty popular in the cities. So these are very urban-based food farms, usually pretty small, but very productive. And they invite people to either do community supported agriculture or to do educational programs around growing or cooking. So I know that that's definitely a growing area. Ag and tech programs, current and retired master gardeners, 4-H, Eagle Scout, Girl Scouts looking for projects, grocery store workers often will do field trips or offer products. Food suppliers, that's a main area where you're going to want to work if you want to change up the food your school is getting for meal service. So how can you talk to them about what can we get that's fresh? What can we get from a local source? What can we get that reflects different ethnicities and cultures around food. And then on top of that, you've got beekeepers, livestock managers, whether that is meat, eggs, or dairy, chefs from restaurants, nutritionists are another great resource to talk to about foods. You may even want to tie in some of the other farm to school areas, like those who work in the fiber arts, those who work on natural dyeing. My kids we've come full circle. My children are now doing a field trip that I did when I was in fourth grade. They're going to the Lowell Mills and are going to get to weave fabrics on looms. I remember doing that when I was in fourth grade. So things like that also are other community tie-ins that you can engage with the kids. Community events, we talked about this one a little bit before, but thinking about what is a community event that you do at your program? Is food already a part of that event? And if so, how? And can you think of any ideas on how you could enhance diversity and inclusion through the food at that event? So, an example of this is, at one of the preschools that I taught at, we used to do apple crisp day in the fall. All the children would do the food preparation, and then the families would come in and join us for eating. What are some ways that we could make that more diverse or culturally inclusive? We could think of certain other types of fruit that work very well in crumbles or crisps. We could bring in different types of berries or Asian pears. We could think about different spices and herbs that we could add in instead of using cinnamon and nutmeg. Maybe we use allspice or five spice or some of the other flavorings. Maybe we even do some with a little bit of cayenne pepper. I don't know if that would work. But thinking about different varieties of apples and where do these apples get their start? And can we look on a map of where all of these different apples originated? Maybe we share a recipe book of different apple recipes that are from different cultures, even though understanding that apples basically originated in this part of the world, knowing that they've been brought back to many other countries and how are other cultures using those. So feel free to think for just a minute or two about any community events that you do that involve food or that could involve food. And then just jot down in the chat, where's some room to grow about some cultural inclusivity. I don't think we need too much time for this, but I'll give you 2 minutes just to think about it and jot down a note or two in the chat. All right. So Does anyone have any examples that they would like to share of a family event that you do that maybe involves food, and any tie-ins that you may have for cultural inclusion? And it's also fine if you don't. Um, but it is certainly something I'd like you to think about, because I know almost every school has some type of family event where the children's families are all together, and just think about, can we find a way to, celebrate the diversity of our group through food or, flavors that we're bringing to this. So just keep it in the back of your head as you think about the role that these events fill in your school community. All right, I have a feeling I'm going to stop sharing for just 1 second because I think we missed a slide in here and I want to make sure. Oh, maybe not. Just gonna skip ahead. Okay, yeah, no, we're good. My bad. All right, so let me reshare that again. My bad. There we go. All right. So this is thinking really big picture, but I think it's important to bring up because, yes, we have our school community, our family community, our local community, but we have a much bigger community, and that includes our government and policymakers. And this often seems so far and so distantly removed. But I will say that most of the farm to school work I have done in the state has been thanks to local government and policymakers that have contributed to funding and grant money and priority work around farm to school. And, this could literally be an entire workshop, and Lord knows I am not the person to be running that workshop, but I will say that you have a very important role to fill, because if your school is doing farm to ECE work, it's important for you to show what that looks like and the success and the enthusiasm, all the fun, exciting things you're doing. You need to spread the word. You need to show that to the people that provided the government money or the funding, that are deciding the policies. Are we going to prioritize farm to school work? With the Department of Early Education and Care and DESE, with public, city, and state health departments. I actually worked with the Boston Office of Public Health to do an entire initiative around supporting family child care workers in Boston to do farm to early child care. So, you can get a letter with a million signatures on it, and that's all well and good. What's really going to get people's attention is those adorable photos and videos and quotes from the kids about why they love doing farm to school work. When you have photos of kids trying a strawberry banana kale smoothie and you have quotes like, "This is way better than I thought it would be. You can't even taste the green." Like, whatever the kids are saying, this is what warms their hearts. This is what they smile about. And then this is what they show to all the money givers and be like, see, this is what the money does. So, you all actually have the power to make farm to school work and grow in this state. Because when you share the word, put out articles, write to representatives about what you're doing with the kids, that's what they notice. And that's what they remember. And that's what gives them that feel good moment. So anytime you can toot your own horn about what you are doing with the kids around farm to school work, that's what really makes a difference for continuing this work. So please think about ways that you can do this. Write to your town paper. I was doing work in a Springfield Head Start, and they got in the local paper that they were going to be partnering with Mass Audubon to do farm to school work. It's not huge, but it gets attention, right? And then they reached out to, I think, the town mayor, governor. I can never remember what we have in Springfield, but they were talking about what they were doing, and they were inviting them to come to a special family event that they did. So really do keep in mind that the more you can talk to people about what you're doing and the more you can share your stories and pictures, the more people are really going to get excited about continuing to support and grow this work. All right, so food and eating and cooking, it unifies us all, right? Everyone's got to eat. Everyone needs to take in nutrition. So we're going to do a fun little activity, and this does work better in person, but that's okay because we're adaptable. We're going to try mapping our food. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a Padlet link into the chat. And Dinah, I'm going to ask you to try and make sure that you can get in. You should be able to. I've used this link before. But what I want you to do is in the Padlet, start making some sticky notes of favorite family recipes. And then if you can, for each recipe that you put in there, and you don't have to write the whole recipe, just whatever the food is. If you know, include what geographic area is that recipe from, and or where does the main ingredient come from? So maybe you don't know where the food comes from, but maybe you know about the origin of the recipe. And I'm going to make life a little easier for you. It's not going to be perfect, but here's a little cheat sheet that will show you some of the origins of your different foods. It's not perfect, but it's a start. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes for this, and it doesn't have to just be a single recipe. So toss up some stickies, toss up some recipes. If you know where they came from and what was on it, add that too, and we will come back together at 7:38. All right. I'm going to invite you all back. Um, Feel free to also drop it in the chat if you weren't able to access the Padlet for any reason. But hopefully you're able to get in. It's a pretty small smattering, mostly just from a few of us, which is telling in and of itself. As you can see, several of us have roots in Eastern Europe, where some of our recipes are coming from. But it is interesting that, yes, potato latkes, potatoes did not get their start in Eastern Europe, and yet that did become a part of uh, yeah, you're probably right about Hungary, where that originated from. The beets, I do think, actually came from Eastern Europe, unless I'm very much mistaken. Now I should look at my cheat sheet and make sure I'm not making that up. Yeah, it's definitely there in Northern and Southeastern Europe. So yeah, beets were there. I see we've got some pizza, Southeastern Europe. Got lost on what its origin is. Well, the tomatoes we have discovered are from the Andes, so good luck figuring out exactly how long it took for that to get there. But yeah, I mean, what I like to do with this activity, and especially when we have a larger group and we can do this up on, I'll often bring. I have like one of those old placemats that's of the world, and I'll have people mark with a whiteboard marker on the map where they think the recipe comes from, where the ingredients come from. And then we look at it together and we say, what parts of the world are not represented here? As you can see, we are very Europe centric here. We have no recipes or ingredients that come from Asia or Africa. We have a little bit from Central America. We don't even really have American recipes or products here. So, I like to do this because I want you to think of, first of all, where are you identifying from in terms of your recipes, right? What is important to you and your history and culture? But then think about, okay, so this may represent me, but I understand that the majority of my students are not Eastern European Jewish descent, right? Like that is not necessarily their experience. So I want to make sure that I don't just focus on my experience and the recipes and foods that are meaningful to me. I want to make sure that what I'm representing represents our community, the other people that are in the program. And then also think about, who are we missing here, right? We may not have any representation of African recipes. We certainly don't have any representation here of, First Peoples, First Nations from North America here. We really don't have Asian recipes here. So how can we use this as an opportunity to see, oh, like we really have a lot of areas that we haven't covered. So let's make sure that we include those. How can we bring that into the conversation? How can we make sure that those recipes and foods and flavors are seen as well? So I like having the opportunity to do this with the staff, and then to also think about how would our children fit into this, and to potentially invite them to be part of it as well if you feel that that's appropriate for your group. Before we move on from this activity, I do want to address a question that came in from Diane about how can we include pictures of children in the school garden that does not exploit them? I think that's a really important question. And we certainly don't want to be in a situation where, like, quick, let's get the one differently abled child in the front of the picture so we can show diversity, right? Or the one person of color in our community. Let's do that. Like, we certainly don't want any kind of posed or fake pictures. What I would say is, let's ask the kids. Like, we've been doing gardening and we were able to do this because we got some money or funding or some policy support. Let's show, these people that helped us how much we love it, how important it is to us. What do you want to show them from our garden? What do you want to tell them? And so it may be that they're like, I want to show them how big our sunflowers are. So they may want to be in a picture where they're measuring themselves against the sunflowers. Maybe they just want to like have a picture of all the things they grew and be like, let's show them what we grew. Let's show them, let's send them the recipe. Let's tell them a story. So, get the children's input. How can we tell our story of how fun this is and why we enjoy it and what did we learn, so that it comes from them and it's authentic? And you can ask the children, like, do we want to have a class picture in the garden and share that? Do we want to send them a picture of all the things we harvested in 1 week? Do we want to send them a picture of the butterfly that we found? You can ask the children, so that the ideas are coming from them. And it's a combination probably of some photos, some quotes from the children, maybe some storytelling. And as a teacher, you have stories to tell as well. And you can share your experience. Like, I remember the first time we went out in the garden, the kids were very shy and they were afraid to touch anything. But after 3 weeks of engaging in the garden, now the kids run right in and they point out to me all the things that have changed since the last time you were there. So share your story as well, because you see the growth and the benefit that's happening in a way that these people who are sitting up on, Policy Hill and whatever it is, aren't able to see that. So you can share your story too. Um, Hopefully that answers your question, Diane. But if you feel like you still need some more guidance on that, please let me know. And I am happy to keep giving some suggestions on that. Do you need parents' permissions to share? That is a great question. You would know your school's policy better than I would. We do, like at our school, we get different types of permissions for photo release, and some of them include, the ability to share photos outside of our organization, but not name any children by first or last name, so no identification. So that's kind of one of our standard ones. Something else you can do if you're worried about getting the permission is find ways to get photos where you don't have the kids' faces. So I have photos where kids are pointing to things. I have photos where kids are holding up all the flowers in front of their face. I have the backs of children's heads because they're so busy digging in the garden. So yes, it can certainly be a challenge sometimes to get those permissions. But I would, kind of talk with, and if you're an outside organizer and you're not part of the school, then I would ask the school teachers and see what their school policy is about whether or not you can share. Because I know as a third party provider, that can often be tricky too. And yeah, Dinah says schools send a publicity permission slip. And hands holding veggies or dirt or backs of heads is also a nice way to do that. One of the photos, I think you'll see it in this one, but it's literally a photo of a child who's taken a corn husk and opened it up like a flower, and she's holding it in front of her face. And I use that photo for everything because you can't see her face, but it's an adorable photo. So I've got one of those too.
Rena, I would just add for Diane that if Sustainable Nantucket, let's say, has a class from the school coming, talk to the teacher and before say, are there students here who can't be photographed? And they will know, they should know in their class who can't be photographed, and they'll identify those kids for you. But yeah, better to be on the safe side.
And I'll say I've had teachers send me photos of kids doing farm to school activities after I've left. And I've been able to ask them, are these photos that I can use for our organization? Can I put them places? And they'll let me know if those are photos I can share. So sometimes they're taking the photos and giving them to me. And then it's, I can ask them, do we have photo permissions for these? And usually if they've taken the photos and sent them to me, it usually means they do. So that's also helpful. All right, so let's see where we're at here. All right, so, as I said, just with that little mapping our food activity, what areas were represented by our ingredients and our recipes? Do those areas represent our culture and ethnic identities? What identities we're missing? And how can we use this kind of study that we have done to inform our current and our future work? So how can we decide, okay, so we're really missing these areas and I want to make sure we're including those perspectives. How can I do that? All right. So as always, I love to leave you with more ideas of topics because it is more than just growing vegetables. We are about to enter maple sugaring season, although it really doesn't feel like it with this extreme cold right now. But sometime in February, I believe we will start getting days above freezing and nights below. And that's when we start maple sugaring, which is a great way to talk about local products, local produce, as well as both indigenous and colonial uses of maple sugar, because the First Nations were the ones who first began doing maple sugaring, but it wasn't actually until the colonialists came along and used metalwork that they started saving and storing maple syrup. So previously to that, they didn't really have a good way to store maple sugar in its liquid form and had to convert it all the way to sugar. And maple syrup came later once we had ways to store that. talking about orchards and vineyards, because we definitely have those in New England. Again, I come from farming stock. My grandfather was an orchardist. He grew apples. Honey and beekeeping. I know honeybees are actually European in origin, but they have become a huge part of our farming culture here, both for the products they produce, but then also for the amazing pollination they do in all of our farms. Talking to children about woolcraft and felting, and then all the other fiber arts, including Angora and cashmere and alpaca, all of which are raised around here. Angora being rabbit, cashmere goat, alpaca, hemp is a plant product, cotton, which is not grown locally, but is what a lot of our clothing is made out of. Bamboo is another popular one. So just thinking of all the different areas where our clothing comes from. Talking to children about different grains and baking. Yes, we know it's not so easy for backyard farming to grow wheat, but we should still talk about the fact that wheat and flour and oats and all of those are also grown on farms. And what do they look like? And what part of the plant are we actually eating? We can talk with some sensitivity around meat and dairy and egg production, because that is also from farms and a part of many of our diets. The concept of fishing, both as wild fishing, but then also there are fish that are bred for food exclusively in fish farms, and that concept, as well as growing mushrooms, right? We do that as well. And then thinking about canning, drying, and other forms of food preservation, because we live in a part of the world where we do not have access to freshly grown food much of the year because of our short growing season. So how do we manage to eat locally all year long through different forms of preservation? So as you talked about, more resources, and I will, of course, send you handouts as well, but reaching out to local greenhouses and even places like Home Depot and Lowe's for extra seed and seedling donations if they have some unsold product. Reaching out to lumber yards that may be willing to donate either, offcuts of lumber or pallets for making garden beds and compost bins. All of the many places that can be a resource in terms of providing garden experience and support, as well as educational ideas, local farms and farmers markets and groceries for unsold product, and then all of the incredible resources online with both workshops and webinars and online printouts and handouts and recipes. There's so much out there, so definitely go check it out. And just to wrap us up with some of the Mass Audubon resources we have. So on the right, you'll see pictures of our Nature Smart books. I'm one of the main authors. They are not farm focused, but they are nature focused, and many of the topics overlap. The books start age 4 to 6 and then go up 7 to 9 and 10 to 12. The QR code at the bottom leads you to a place where you can order them, but you can also get them off Amazon. We also offer a whole host of workshops and trainings beyond our garden workshop series here. A lot of nature workshops around nature-based curriculum, as well as an intro to how do you teach indoors and outdoors about nature with children, and how do you deal with the logistics of weather and other safety challenges. So a whole bunch of workshops you can find on our website. We offer customized professional trainings for schools that have a very particular topic in mind that they would like. I just recently did one for a school that was doing a lesson on how nature solves problems. So we talked a lot about animal tool use and shelter building among animals and biomimicry and all of that. We do site visits where we come and visit your schools. You kind of show us around your program spaces, and then we do a customized report. How can you use your existing spaces and resources to do more nature and garden-based learning? We do curriculum consulting and coaching, where we help you design curriculum. We come in and teach demo lessons and then debrief with the staff with the goal of eventually transitioning over to you developing and teaching the lessons. And then when you put all of that together, the site visits, the coaching and consulting, the PDs, you get our SEEDS program, which is a year-long partnership program with your school, where we do it all, and we help support the development and comfort of your staff for teaching about nature and gardening, as well as including a family engagement component as well. Lastly, we do have some free resources, and I will also include these on the email that I send out in the next few days. But I strongly encourage you to sign up for our quarterly early ed newsletter. I know we have at least 2 free online PDs we're going to be offering. So if you're interested in signing up for either of those, the quarterly early ed newsletter is the best way to get up-to-date info. I only send it out 4 times a year. It includes curriculum ideas for the season. But of course, you can always email me too if you want to know if we have any free PDs coming up. And then online, we have 4 nature-based STEM units for early educators available in English and Spanish. And that is birds, weather, trees, and dirt. So very applicable. You can download them, do whatever you like with them. We have some online activity cards called Young Explorers. We have nature bingo cards that we switch up for the season. So a way to go outside with the kids and do some scavenger hunts, and nature play videos. If you want to see what does it look like when teachers go outside and do nature-based learning with their students. So with that in mind, thank you so much. This is an email where you can reach me. You can also reach me at rzampiron@massaudubon.org, which is the email that I sent to you earlier. And then that QR code is a very quick, 3-question survey just to help us better understand your needs as early educators and how we can support all of your work. We'd love to hear from you. And I am just flipping through. Dinah has just added some signups and resources as well. Dinah, would you like to talk about that?
Yes, sure. If you're interested in receiving a Harvest of the Month newsletter, we have an elementary and secondary edition. I put the link in for that. And we also have a new hot off the presses early childhood edition. Every month you'll get a newsletter that rotates around the Harvest of the Month, crop of the month, which has book suggestions and history, jokes, curriculum, easy activities to do. And I also put our general newsletter link in the chat if you just want to stay current on what Mass Farmers School is doing and events like this in person and webinars and other opportunities. We won't bombard you with emails, but we would have you get our emails when we send them out. So feel free to use those links. And yeah, thank you for joining us for this evening. Oh, and I forgot to say, we did talk earlier about the conference. We do have a Mass Farm and Sea to School conference this year. The date is March 18th. It is at Smith College in Northampton. There will be early childhood education workshops. There's things around for educators, food service, school gardens, and I will put the link for the conference registration in the chat right now.
And I am just sharing. Diane was kind enough to share a wonderful information about National Seed Swap Day, but she accidentally put it in just to the host and panelists. So I'm sharing it so everyone can see that amazing information. So see if you can get involved in Seed Swap Day, because that sounds like a lot of fun, even if it's going to be extra cold.
And making seed packs would be really fun for those little art projects. I will also everyone, we'll send this recording out to everyone as well. So stay tuned for that. And thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. I'll stay on for just a few minutes if anyone has any additional questions, but you can also email me at any time. And thank you all for joining us tonight.